Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome in. We're going to get started on part 2 of how I left my toxic narcissistic relationship. If you missed part 1, you can find the recording on YouTube at the Inner Power Collective. And subscribe and make sure you follow that page. There's lots of tips, tools, and training videos and all kinds of help over there. So make sure you check out the Inner Power Collective on YouTube. So yesterday we left off where we were kind of talking about, I'd had a reading, a session done in which I was kind of like reinformed that, hi Scott, that, in fact, I would be moving, right? That I would be, so as a recount from yesterday, I had met my ex-husband when I was a small child, preschool age. We got together at 19. We married at 27. And now in 2000, and it would have been 2010, I discovered I was surprised with a third pregnancy. And I remember distinctly this day because he majorly struggled having the small kids at home. And he just was always he has a very short fuse, and he was very much always in a rush for them to grow up and not need to be taken care of. And if you remember from yesterday, I said that he is an only child and he has no first cousins. And so he truly grew up as, a silver spoon child. He came from a middle to upper class family, and he was it. So he never wanted for anything, is what the expression is. And so we had, my first daughter was a surprise. And as I mentioned yesterday, when I told him that we were expecting her, we were married 4 months at this point, his first reaction was telling me that I had trapped him, even though we were married, and at this point we had been together, 8 years. 8 going on 9 years. 9 years we had been together at this point. And I trapped him. That's what he told me upon the announcement of my first child. The second child we had conceived because my mother was losing her battle with stage 4 colorectal cancer. And it was a way to give her something to hold on to, which she did make it for another, she was 5 months old. My second child was 5 months old when my mother passed. So fast forward to, they are 3 years apart, three and a half years apart, my middle and my youngest. So fast forward, and I discover that I am expecting again. And I actually had taken a dollar store pregnancy test. We had our neighbor across the street come over to help him. He went out and, there was always a situation where he could go out and spend as much money as he wanted, buy whatever he wanted. And, there was no, I wasn't to say anything. It was his money. That's the way he looked at it. He was spending his paycheck. And he went out and bought this huge TV, ridiculous. And my neighbor across the street had come over to help him bring it in the house because it was literally that big, and kind of set it up on the TV stand. So Hi, Christina, long time. And so I used the restroom and took the test, and I left the test in the restroom because I wasn't going to make a scene in front of the neighbor. And so the neighbor eventually leaves. I'm sitting at the kitchen table, which is probably 20 feet around a bend, but 20 feet from where the bathroom was, the downstairs bathroom. And so the neighbor leaves, he goes to use the bathroom, he comes out, and he is already like ready to go to war on the front line. And he is, what the hell is this? And what the, all the expletives, and what is this? And I'm just sitting at the table like my eye, just scared. And I'm like, what is it? What does it look like? And he sits down at the table across from me. And he said, what the hell is this? And I was like, he's like, is this real? I was like, yeah, it's real, yeah, it's real. And he said, I thought we were done. And I said, well, obviously, my response was, well, obviously God had other plans. And he literally took his head and slammed it down on the kitchen table. That was his reaction to my my son, the only boy, and to date, the only grandchild that's a boy on both his side and my side. It's the only boy. The only one to, carry his name on, whatever the case may be. But yes, that was his reaction, was slamming his forehead to the wooden table, was his reaction to my third. So that went over stellar as an announcement, as another example. And then there was, life goes on. We knew the timings of his comings and goings during the week with his job. So, it was like a sigh of relief when he would leave in the morning for work. I got the kids off, up and off and ready for school. At this point, they were preschool and kindergarten, and the baby was home with me at this point. He didn't do I did all the cooking, all the cleaning, I did bath and bed, and I did all of those things. He never took care of a birthday. I did all the prepping, planning. If, we were having a birthday party, I did all of the prepping, planning, shopping, wrapping, invites, cooking, all of it. Same with Christmas. He was, just any holiday that didn't center around him was like a bah humbug. I know that's extremely common, so I'm putting it out there. Any birthday, any holiday, he just was like, I don't care. This is stupid. This is a Hallmark stupid thing. Didn't matter if it was Mother's Day, Christmas, a birthday. He just was miserable about all of them and would stress out and purposely stress out to ruin said holiday every year. I know that's very common as well. I remember a couple of really deep instances, and this is back again when we still lived in New Jersey. And there was a time where the girls had, and again, from yesterday as a recap, my daughters are 27 months apart. And all of my kids, one thing I definitely instilled in them since they were all little was, no matter what happens in life, you three only have each other. So you need to treat each other as best friends, right? No matter what. Because at the end of the day, that's what you've got. You've got your sister, you've got your brother. In his case, you've got your two sisters. And I will tell you to this day, now my kids are currently 21, 19, and 15, and they are thick as thieves. They are thick as thieves. I mean, obviously that backfires in your face as a parent sometimes, but in all honesty, I wouldn't have it any other way. They stand up for each other. They hang out together. My oldest is off at college, but they talk. They talk more than they keep each other's secrets. They do all of the things. So there was this time. The girls had one of those like 3-foot Barbie dream houses. You all on board? You know what that means, right? They had like one of those gigantic pink Barbie dream houses. And we had in New Jersey, we had a finished basement. It was carpeted and sheetrocked, and there was TV down there. And I mean, it was nothing fancy, but it was finished enough that like their toys and stuff could be down there. And I think we had a lazy boy chair down there originally from our townhouse. So when we moved, it went downstairs and the other furniture went upstairs. So they had all their toys and stuff down there. So they spent a lot of time down there. They had this Barbie dream house, and they had been down there playing and everything. And he goes down there at one point, and we hear him screaming. And it turns out he had, and you're going to have to forgive me on this because I'm not a video gamer, but he had one of the video game systems that had like a plastic platform, and I think it was Nintendo or Sony, I don't know. Anyways, the thing sat like this on this platform. It slid in or clipped into this platform, and it sat like this. And it had been, I guess, knocked off this platform. And he went down there, and when I tell you, he lost his shit. The kids still remember this incident, and we're talking, so today literally marks 10 years that I've lived in New Jersey. So at that point, it was before, obviously, all of this incident happened. So we're talking more than 10 years ago this happened. So my oldest daughter she was 11 when we moved here, which meant my middle daughter was 9. She had just had her 9th birthday when we moved here. We had her 9th birthday, literally had a party and a going away party, and then we moved like the very same weekend. So that's how little, at least. There was probably a year or so, maybe even 2 years before that happened. So he was screaming downstairs, absolutely freaking out. And come to find out, he assumed that somebody had broken this video game system. Just totally jumped to like that snap decision. He just assumed that this had happened. And so in his absolute manic like fit of rage, he goes and he kicks across the basement, kicks this Barbie dream house clear across like a 25-foot basement, punts the whole entire thing. The kids are hysterically crying. It was a mess. It was not good. It had to have been in like 2000, I'm going to say 14 or 15. It had to have been, because even my youngest was walking at that point. So it had to have been somewhere in that range. I'm going to say 2014 or 15. The kids are hysterically crying. They're scared. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? Of course, there's yelling and screaming. He's freaking out. The kids go running out our front door. They're terrified. And they're screaming like, call the police, little kids. And in the end, the police were not called. They weren't. They should have, but they weren't. But this is the cycle. Like, you're afraid. You get so wrapped up in the fear of what is going to happen, what can happen, what is going to happen. And there was no physical towards us necessarily. Although I can definitely tell you he believed in a spanking. And I won't even get into those stories because they're not, relevant at this point right now. But he lost it, and the kids still remember that incident clear as day. So obviously not great. And so finally there in that timeline, I had enough. I didn't want to be in New Jersey anymore. I had been talking about it for years. My mom had passed away at this point. She never even met my son, so she had been gone. My dad at this point had remarried, and he was now living in Florida. My brothers were all dispersed. None of my 3 brothers were living in New Jersey. They're all 2 are older and 1 are younger than me. Literally, there was not anything specific. The only thing that was keeping us there was that his parents still lived there, and they refused. They refused to even upgrade their house, change their house, or do anything. They just absolutely wasn't happening. So I tell him, I want to go to North Carolina, and I'm going with or without you. That's how much sudden burst of confidence or something that I got. So I tell him I'm going. So we start actually making these plans and talk about getting the house ready, putting the house on the market. We take a weekend and we get the house on the market. We take a weekend, he and I, and we come down here to North Carolina. And we looked at, I think, 3 different towns. 2 different towns? Maybe it was 2 different towns. I can't remember now, believe it or not, even though I have the memory of an elephant. But we looked at 2 or 3 different towns, and we got to the town I'm in now, and we had looked at like 12 houses among the 2 cities at this point. And we had pulled up to this one house, not the one I'm currently in. This was 10 years ago. We pulled up to this one house, and I said, "You're in trouble." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "This is the house." And he said, "We haven't even been inside yet. We're sitting at the curb." This just goes to show you, like, my intuition's wild. My claircognizance is off the chains. And sure enough, we ended up renting that house. So we sell our house in New Jersey. We pack everything up. And we moved down here 10 years ago today, August 12th, 2016, 10 years today. We moved down here. We moved into this house. The house is, everybody's got their own bedroom at this point. So now the house is larger than the one we had in New Jersey. And it was wild because we were paying, at least like $500 a month less than we had been paying in New Jersey. So that was kind of cool. But here's the thing. This is where things started to get really, really crazy. He couldn't officially move down for the first month that the kids and I were here. Now we came down because school had started. They had to get registered, enrolled, all of those things had to start happening. Now on the back burner of all this, in my mind, I'm getting us established, right? I'm getting us residency because my mind is smart at this point. I'm thinking okay, we're out of New Jersey, so now our laws are different. Although I will tell you, there are some Southern laws that are make no sense at all. So we moved down here, and I knew from the things that we had been through and the way things that were going that I needed to make sure that I was very cognizant of what was going on, my reactions, behavioral responses from either one of us. It's almost like it was a last-ditch effort to get away from the manipulation and the meddling and all the things that were going on in Jersey and see what happens if we move here. But a leopard doesn't change its spots. Leopard doesn't change its spots. So things got better for the first, couple of days. I'm going to tell you just days. As soon as he had to go back to New Jersey, the crazy really showed out. He left me and the kids here. And we moved in, set up house, did all the things, got the kids registered for school, did all the things. He had to go back to New Jersey because the house, we hadn't closed on the house yet. So he still had to take care of the house. and he hadn't found a job here yet around this city. So he had to go back up to go to work. You know, he had to keep a job. So he goes back to New Jersey, and let me back up for 1 second. When we were still in New Jersey, before we went, he had started doing all these like crazy behaviors. He started like reading my journal. Like it wouldn't matter if I buried it in my nightstand. Like he was going through things, going through my drawers, like looking for notes or whatever the hell he thought he was going to find. He started going through like my personal possessions. I woke up one night, in the middle of the night, he had gone through my purse. That at this point in time, everything was so invasive with him and had gone so like almost manic that I had started bringing my purse upstairs and would put it next to like my side of the bed. That's how wild things had gotten to this point. And I literally woke up to him having trifled through my purse and was like trying to find stuff in reads, like asking me about like tax bills and like waking me up for this stuff at like 2 a.m. So just crazy, suspicious, weird stuff going on. So he goes back to New Jersey. We're now living in North Carolina, and he goes back like basically every weekend, every other weekend. But oh my God, like the jealousy and like the suspicion overdrive that started, he was texting me like 250 times a day. Crazy stuff, accusing me of stuff, like cursing at me through all the screaming about making sure I bring the garbage out and who am I talking to and pick up the goddamn phone and just crazy stuff. Like he was just losing it. And so I'm just trying to maintain calm at this point and, you know, answer when and where I can. And I mean, truthfully, but like also just trying to like, you know, not, I had things myself I had to work on just for myself. But at this point, I was just trying to keep a semblance of calm and peace, and obviously maintaining with like the 3 kids and keeping them, you know, going to school and maintaining some like normalcy for them, making sure that like they're not absorbing too much of all of this. And I had opened an email, like I created and opened a new email account, and I had given my older middle brother the email address and the password to it. And I told him, like, because at this point, like I've seen a lot of crazy from him, but I had never seen this level of crazy from him. I had said to my brother, if anything happens, if something weird goes on, if anything pops off, like you have access to this email, and I'm putting all these screenshots and stuff in this email. So like you have access to this if you should need it. It never obviously came to anything like that. It got progressively worse. So then I kept telling him, like, even in New Jersey, and his parents, the same thing. We begged him to get like therapy. We begged him to take some acknowledgement for all of this, like recognize, like do better, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do better. So, I told him, I'm like, you need anger management therapy, because he would pop off like at anything at this point. And so here we are, things are getting progressively worse. We've just moved here. We're the brand new neighbors, brand new town, brand new state. Like we didn't move here for somebody. We didn't move here for a job. Like it was literally, truly like a lifelong dream and a fresh new beginning. And so I was obviously nervous, but I kept telling him, like, you need anger management therapy. And he wouldn't hear of it. He didn't. It wasn't his doing. It's my doing. I'm the one who created all of this. I made him mad. I made him this. I made him that. All of this was my fault. If I hadn't, he wouldn't have, was always it. And so it got worse and worse and worse. And then there was one night, and I know that my girls both remember this night. My oldest was at a sleepover, and a friend that she's still friends with to this day, but she was at a sleepover, and my middle and my youngest, who was asleep, it was like 12:30 at night, and he and I had been fighting. We were, I don't even know what we were screaming about. That's not even relevant because it was happening all the time. So we were fighting one night, and we were downstairs. I had gone. Now, if you remember yesterday, I said to you guys, there really wasn't much violence, so to speak. That wasn't really the issue. It wasn't that it was never an issue, and I already know that that's too much, but it wasn't that was my focal issue with him. We had been fighting this one night, and I had removed myself and gone upstairs. And the kids were obviously both asleep, although my middle had woken up. And I go to escape. I close. We had French doors on our bedroom. I close them. He busts them open, and he's screaming and yelling. My middle wakes up, obviously. She's scared. I'm scared. I'm like, go away. Just go downstairs. Leave me alone. Like, I don't want to do this. And he's in my face, screaming and yelling at me. And I'm like, I'm not having it. Like, get out of the room. Like, get out. Just go away. Get out, right? And I had my hair in a ponytail. And he's beet red screaming at me. And he takes my ponytail and he yanks my head backwards and he spits in my face. And I don't think I had ever been more shocked. Of all the things that, like I said yesterday, that had happened, like, I don't think I was ever more shocked than I was in that moment. And I remember that. And I literally ran out of the room and into my middle daughter's room. And I slammed the door closed behind me, and I locked it, and I sat against the door. And he's banging on it, and he's kicking it. And I'm screaming, like, call the police, call 911, call 911. And he's kicking and banging at the door, begging us, don't do that, don't call the police. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, that specific night. That was my reckoning night. However, that was about 9 months after we moved to North Carolina. So there was this was in May, this happened, and then we finally separated in August. This month will be, the end of this month will be 9 years ago that we've been apart now. So that was another incident that happened. The police, again, I wound up sleeping on her floor with the door locked, and he just needed to calm the hell down. We were definitely really scared that night. So things can look very calm and peaceful on the outside to the outside world. And people, of course, these things are never discussed. You don't go telling people these things happen unless they're your closest and nearest and dearest, right? Your best friend or and at this point, my mom was already gone, so I didn't even have that. My dad and I were, we're just not as close as my mom and I were ever. We speak, but we don't speak often. So, that was my reckoning night. Cassidy, thank God, was away at a, sleepover, and my middle was there with me. They both still remember that night very well. That was my reckoning night, though. So up until that, so there was one day, I feel like I'm jumping all over the place today, so I apologize for that. And again, if you want to recap on part 1 that led us up to all of this, you can, the whole entire video it's on YouTube. You can go check it out at the Inner Power Collective. is the handle over there. Make sure you subscribe and follow for all of the tips and lessons and things you need for boundaries and emotional intelligence and empowerment and all of the things that you need in life to rise up and live the best life and have the best business of your dreams over there. I've been a life coach now for 9 years. And so all of this, I kind of, like I said, I decided that night. Now, I had been already mentally, as I said to you a few minutes ago, I had been mentally prepping for, I don't know if anybody is talking to me here. I see lots of people joining and, okay. So I had been mentally prepping for, if this move and this new start wasn't the answer to what we needed, then I had been mentally prepping and preparing to do what I needed to do to separate. And, of course, we all go through this mental process where, you don't want to break the family up because of the kids, right? But the mental thought to me quickly became, but what is it teaching my kids to stay? What is it teaching them if I stay? That I should stay no matter what just because we have kids? Do I want my daughters to date and get involved with someone like him? Do I want my son to emulate him and these behaviors? Do I want him to become that? To treat women the way that I was being treated, that they were being treated? Did I want that for them? Became my new thought process. And every decision I was making, and every reaction I was having, and every thought process that was going on, that was my center focus in all of these things. So I began to really plan. And whether it be I would go to the grocery store, and if it was his turn, buying groceries, I would get like $20 or $30 cash back because it didn't show on the receipt, and I would get $20 or $30 cash back, and I would stow it away. Or if it was having a mental note of where important paperwork in the house was, like birth certificates and social security cards and passports, things like that. If I had to, if it really came down to a moment where there was an emergency and I had to grab them and run, like, could I put my hands on that stuff in, under a minute? Like making sure I knew where those things were. I had the email set up with all the proof and things that were going on. I had, at this point, had my own bank account. Establishing credit for myself was another important piece. I had started thinking about, the housing aspect of it. And so what ultimately ended up happening as we fast forward, things did not get better. They got worse in the sense that, like, the fighting escalated, screaming matches escalated, things like that. Not necessarily escalated where things were physically violent, but like definitely there just got to a point where there wasn't a day where there wasn't something. And then our lease was coming up, and they messaged us in, I want to say June, that the lease was up at the end of August, because that's when we had moved in August. And so they were giving us notification that there was what they called a non-renewal of lease. Now, apparently, the guy who owned the house we were renting, in the however many years that he's had owned this house, and we didn't know this going into it, but for, let's say he owned the house 6 years or something like that, every single year he has new tenants. He had never renewed a tenant in all the years. He just got new people in every year. Obviously, we didn't know that going into this. So we got this notification, and that sent him into another tailspin, because non-renewal of leave. Oh my God, we're getting kicked out. We're going to lose everything. Is not what was going on, but that is the way he reacted. Not to mention the fact that we had like 2 months to find and figure out what we were doing. We were hardly in dire straits. So he begins this frantic house hunting spiel. And then at this point, my brain is already going, I feel like this is the universe telling me, like, this is your sign that it's time to separate. You've been thinking about it for years at this point, and like, this is the time. Opportunity struck. This is the time. If you got to be out of this house, and he's on this house hunt search, this is the time when this happens to be like, we're not going together. Things got worse and worse, and I did humor him and went out and looked at houses. Both, he at this point wanted to buy a house here, and I said, we're not ready to buy a house down here, and we're not specifically financially in the position to do that. We had, he hadn't even been in his job a year, because he moved down here later, and along comes his parents, who decide to tell him that they will give him a 6-figure amount of money to put down and buy a place. And he comes and tells me this, and he's all excited. And I said, absolutely TF not. There is no chance that I'm taking 100 from your parents, and I'm not being in that kind of indebted to them. It's not happening. He thought I was crazy, but I had already lived this with him too, because when we first got married back in 2004, his parents had helped us on a loan to get our townhouse, and fully expected that. But then also that went along with that was that they expected that, it was in their name. They got to come over whenever they wanted. When things needed to be fixed up or painted, like, they had a say and a right in it, because they had lent us this. I was not living under that thumb. So his parents offered this, and I said, absolutely not. I said, we need to rent. And like I said, at this point, my mind is still going like, I think it's time for me to take my opportunity. So he goes and he hires this realtor who's taking us around looking at all these different houses. And what I had done was I had contacted the rental company that we had the current house in, and to ask them would they be willing to let us stay, and not us as in him and me and the kids, because at this point we had I had decided we were separating. We had to do this. Like I said, I had been planning. This was not like an overnight just, I made the decision with that final incident in May, and then June, July, and August. It was 4 more months of planning and getting my ducks in a row before this actually happened, and had been processing and thinking about it before we even moved south to North Carolina. So we go look at all these houses. His parents had offered this money. When we go look at these houses, he's looking at these houses like to buy, and I'm like, I'm still talking about renting, because I am not taking that kind of money from your parents. There's too many stipulations behind it. And so like I said, I started planning. I called the rental office, and I was like, what are the chances that the owner of this place would let us re-sign? Us as in me and the kids, but I didn't specify that. Like, what are the chances that it can be re-signed? Can it be re-signed in my name? And so they came back to me, and I guess the owner had reluctantly but did agree to let us stay, but this time wanted first and last month's rent for the year up front. So they wanted 2 months rent up front upon the re-sign, the release. Okay, which meant I had to start scrambling because that was a chunk of money that I at the moment didn't have. And so I'm working on that end. I'm scrambling. I knew that they had to come and do a home inspection, and that meant that I had to keep the house clean, picked up, tip-top shape, like, and it still wasn't enough. He was still like, I mean, it looks like you're at least trying. It looks like, you know, it's at least, the house was like literally in mint condition. And so we go out this one day, and somewhere, okay, so then there was this point where he had wanted to he was going on a trip up to New Jersey to visit his parents. He was going to take like, I think a 4-day weekend, maybe it was 5, a 4-day weekend, and he was going to drive up to New Jersey. And so he was going to go by himself to go do this. And so I had decided, and I don't think I said anything to him, that I was going to the very same weekend pack up the kids and take a trip, but I was going to go south to Florida to see my own dad. So we basically did, it's almost the exact same mileage, whichever way you go. He went north 8 hours, and I went south, I think it's 9 hours. And that's what we did. He was so annoyed that I was, because in his mind, going to Florida was a vacation, even though he was also going on a trip to New Jersey, also had to take time off and whatever. But mine was a vacation, and, you know, because I would have help with the kids. You mean the kids that you weren't willing to take with you? The kids that, like, I still had to take them, so I just got help with them, but it's a vacation for me. These are the kinds of circle around conversations we would have. I go down, have a long talk with my dad. I basically tell my dad I think I'm ready to leave and separate. I'm terrified to tell my dad this because that's old school thinking over there. And he just basically said, whatever you got to do. It definitely wasn't that easy. We both get back from our trips. We're at the table talking like a week later, and we're again fighting about renting versus buying. And we're sitting at our kitchen table, and he gets mad, and he, like, screaming and yelling again, always. He gets mad, he storms out the front door, and what's he do? He called up the realtor that he had been working with. Now, I didn't know any of this was happening until well after the fact. He called up the realtor and he said, put a bid in on the house. The one house that we had looked at that I was like, it was on the market, but were they willing to rent it out? And the realtor was like, I'll find out. You know, the house was actually it's a beautiful house. It was getting ready to go into foreclosure. So it was like at a steal, huge house. And he turned around and called this realtor and told him to go ahead and put a bid in on that house. So he was behind my back going to go ahead and take this band of money from his parents, and he was going to get this house. Now, there's a law in North Carolina that you cannot buy property if you're without your spouse. If you're married, you cannot go and buy a house or anything like that without your spouse on the paperwork. So given that law, what winds up happening is his parents do buy this house, and they put everything in their name. So the title, mortgage, all of it is in their name. So I find out that he did this. I find out that the offer was accepted. I find out this is happening. And I said, well, we are separating because I'm not doing that. I'm not going. And the begging and the borrowing and the pleading, and I said, no, you made this decision. So this is, again, I feel like God stepped in and made this decision and saved me. It's one of those miracles of life that I talk about. Miracle situations and things that happen. And so they get the house, and this whole time, he has, everything with the rental company winds up, I get okayed, but I had to come up with first and last month's rent. Now I'm scrambling because keep in mind, I told you through this whole entire thing, we've been married at this point 13 years, and all of our things, the mortgage and the title and the deed to the house in New Jersey, all of that was in his name. So I never got credit for it. When we left New Jersey, he had a 69 Charger that he sold for cash, and I wasn't allowed to see a penny of it. He sold it for like $33,000. I wasn't allowed to see a penny of that. He had cashed out his retirement fund because where he was working, and I'm not even going to say what industry, but where he was working, that particular one only existed in New Jersey. It didn't come as far south, so he cashed out his retirement fund, and I wasn't allowed to see a penny of that. This was all before we even separated. The house sold, and the profits from selling the house, I wasn't allowed to have a penny of that. Like, he took, and I swear to you, he took and pocketed all of that. And I literally not a nickel. I didn't get a nickel from it. He pocketed all of it. Paid off his credit cards, paid off like whatever. I didn't see any of it. So I had to, now I'm looking to lease and rent this house by myself. And that's with like virtually no credit, because for the last 13 years, everything had been in his name. I had brand new cars every few years for sure. They were leased, but they were all in his name. Everything was in his name. I was the spouse. So yeah, it was great. But everything comes with a price, right? There's always these strings attached. And so here I am. Now I'm about to start this journey and do it all by myself. And so I needed a co-signer. I needed to come up with the cash. And at this point, he had no idea what we were even doing. He was just begging me to come with him. And I think he was just assuming I'd have nowhere to go, that in the end of it, I would have to crumble and pack and go. But he started to notice as the time and date was getting closer and closer, like I wasn't packing boxes. I wasn't, pulling things out of closets, and I wasn't doing any of those things. And so he had started to be like, what the hell is going, like, do you plan to pack anything? Do you plan to? And at this point, I wasn't really, I was very much so in my going gray rock stage, and I was very stoic about things. So I was not giving him like information that he would use against me, and I was not letting him rattle me. I was really practicing boundaries and practicing my emotional regulation. This was fairly new to me, all of this. I was learning all of these things and practicing them real time in front of him. And that, again, the journal that I talked about yesterday, the narcissist and the empath, kept coming to me and relaying in my head. And I'm practicing these things real time because he's, commanding and coming right at me, and very suspicious about like what's going on and what's happening, because he's packing boxes and doing all these things to go to this house that his parents just bought him, and I was refusing to go. So where was I going to go? Where were the kids going to go? And so the mistake was made. I'm going to kind of chuckle about it now. The rental company, I sent the contract and all that stuff back to them, and they call him. and they call him about the leasing it for a second year, the release. And they say to him, like, everything's good to go, but we still need, because they obviously had missed the part where I said we were separating. Because I already, like I said, I had a cosigner and all this on there. They had called him and told him that they needed his signature on the papers still. And that was essentially how he found out that I did in fact have a place to go, that the kids and I were staying behind another year, and that he really was going to have to move out and go to this house by himself. Now, mind you, this house that he bought was only 2 blocks away from where we were living. And he still lives there to this day. It's been 2007, 9 years. 9 years. Hi, Aaliyah. So he's still there to this day, but that is literally how he found out that I was, in fact, not going with him, and I was separating. And the begging and pleading, this is where, like, that mask goes back up and they're on their best behavior, and the begging and the pleading and the love bombing was in full force. And all of a sudden now he's promising me that he's going to go to anger management therapy and he's going to get it taken care of. And please don't do this. Please, don't break our family up. This was my doing. Of course, it was always my doing, but now it's my doing. Please don't break our family up. And I just was like, it's too late. Like, the difference is the part of me that tried and tried and tried for a decade was now to the point where I'm burnt out. I'm done trying. I've given you 975 million trillion chances at this point, and I know the cycle. I know the patterns. I know how this story goes. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. And I wasn't, they talk about how it's so difficult. The thing is, I had been processing. I had been thinking. I had been kind of mentally preparing myself. I knew where documents were. I had a game plan, even if it was a rough game plan. Like, I had already done a lot of mental preparation. I had been practicing boundaries. I had been practicing this emotional intelligence and regulation. These, going gray rock. It was new to me, but not so new to me. I mean, I had been practicing it. I had awareness. I knew how to pay bills. I knew the action steps I was going to have to take. I knew, and I'll tell you, the one thing that happened to me before the true separation was my oldest had come to me, and I was standing in the kitchen of the house, the first house we lived in down here. And he was, I don't know, I think he was outside possibly mowing the lawn or something, but freaking out. And we all just knew at this point, we all been trained like puppies, that when he was in a mood or if he was giving off some kind of energy, just leave him alone. Don't rock the cradle. Just leave him alone. And, everybody kind of like scampers away like mice. And she had come to me, my oldest, and she says, Mom, when do we get to leave? Shattered my heart. Mom, when do we get to leave? It's coming, baby girl. It's coming. So he closes. He ended up having like a 2-week closing or 30-day closing, something really crazy on this house. I think it was maybe it was a 2 or 3 week closing he had on this house, and still begging and pleading for me to go with him. So he decides all of a sudden, 13 years after going through all this and begging him, even as far back as New Jersey, he decides he's going to go to anger management therapy. And like I said, at this point, I was like, I don't really believe much of anything you have to say. And we'll see what happens. We'll see. And so he had moved out. He was living in this new house, this great big house all by himself. I had one of the big sources of contention for him was always like about money. And I had started in network marketing when we were still in New Jersey, and I had done extraordinarily well. Back in 2011, I had joined a nutritional company, and I went from like broke, but I had already had a name and reputation in the industry. And in 6 months, so that was October 27th, 2011. That's how crazy I still remember it. October 27th, 2011, I joined this company. And by May, so we're looking at like literally 6 months, I flew to the top of the company. And I was recognized as one of the top recruiters of the company. And I was literally making six figures. I was making over $10,000 received every single month. And even back then, it wasn't good enough for him. He would tell me, get a real job. You're not made for this stuff. This isn't you. You're not going to have the kind of success these people have. Just constantly degrading, constantly belittling, constantly downplaying. At that point, I was making twice what he was making. And I had taken my big bonus check that came in, and I went and bought 2 brand new living room sets with it. One for we're still in New Jersey, one for the family room area and one for the formal living room area. I bought a coffee table. I bought a floor lamp. I bought 2 end tables. I bought lamps that go on the end tables. I bought everything. And when we separated, we had replaced the dining room set that we had, and he opened a credit card at Raymore and Flanagan. So in his mind, he bought the dining room. That's fine, whatever. Because by the time I separated, I really didn't care. Like, I didn't care what you took. I just wanted you to go out the door. Like, just go out the door and close it, and that's it. And, like, I don't really care what you take. I'm so broken and distraught at this point. Like, I really didn't care about the possessions of things. Just go. And so he was like, I have nothing over there. And I was like, I'll tell you what, even though I bought them and you had to take the dining room table because you bought it, I bought the 2 living room sets, but just to get you out of here, you can have one of them. I'll keep one and you can take the other one. So he did that. He took 1 living room set and left the other one for me. And I kept the coffee table and the end tables, but he wanted them, so I sold them to him. Like, I don't know. They were not cheap, but I think I got a couple $100 for them. Crazy stuff. Just crazy stuff. He stole things out of the kitchen, and I do say stole because these were things like he didn't cook. He didn't know how to cook or anything, but he would like, so petty, so characteristic of him. But like, for example, he took like, I think it was 1, maybe 2, like soup bowls that went specifically to our china set. Like, he took 2 soup bowls. I had a scale that I used to use that I would like weigh meat on. Like, if I had ground beef, I would weigh it out to like 1 pound portions so that I could freeze them and they were the same. Like, he stole the meat scale out of the kitchen and then told me he never touched it. Just weird behavior. I had a mountain bike that my dad had bought me years prior. It was a Trek mountain bike. And he, at some point, in New Jersey. Like, we both used it, even though it was mine. And he went and replaced the seat on it for a more comfortable seat. So when he was moving out, because he was being petty and pissed off, he stole the seat off of the mountain bike. He took that with him. It was an ugly separation, especially for the first, I would say, after a year, after, like, I would say close to the year mark, then it got really ugly. But it was ugly. So for the first year, so he started to go to anger management therapy, and he would go do that whatever day it was, and still accusing me of, like, having men there, which never happened. Like, never happened, not one time. I don't know where this stuff was coming from, but, like, especially, like, with the kids there and everything. So he had accused me of all this stuff, and the kids and I were sitting in the living room at the house. We had separated at this point, and there's a knock at the door. And so I get up and I go, and I'm kind of, like, looking, and I see him duck, and I open the front door, and I had told him that I had filed taxes, for the refund. And I told him I filed taxes. So he had left anger management therapy and shown up at my house, pissed off, like, completely enraged. So I was like, I said to him, I go, you just left anger management therapy to pop up at my house to pop off on me. Like, you left anger management therapy to come here and freak out on me. I said, this is like, an alcoholic going to an AA meeting and then, like, going to the bar afterwards. So he shows up and he's freaking out about my telling him that I was going to file taxes. So what does he do? Literally, the very next morning, he runs off. He goes to, like, H&R Block. He calls me up and he says, don't file your taxes. And I said, why not? And he goes, because I already did, and I took the 3 kids. It was all about him and doing what he wanted to do and getting the refund and him having it all, even though the kids were with me, living with me, and I was the one taking care of them, and there was no child support or anything going on. That's the kind of character. That speaks a lot about his character. That's the kind of man we'd been dealing with. So he stole the taxes, essentially. And hello, everybody joining. And so crazy behavior, popping up like that. I'll never forget that. Then he would turn around a day or so later and he would be texting me and calling me. And at this point, his name is, like, on silent. So, like, it wasn't blocked. Like, I could look and, like, if I opened my text, I could, like, physically see if he had texted, but his messages weren't coming through. They were silenced. And begging me to, like, come over to the house and have, like, a wine and cheese date on his deck, or, like, let's go to dinner. Like, I think you were missing the point that we separated. But he was trying his damnedest to, that mask was up and he was doing his love bombing thing. I knew all of these cycles very well at this point. But it wasn't, at some point, it took about, I would say about 9-10 months, like basically a year, somewhere in that time stretch, for him to finally really get the fact that I was done, I was disconnected, and I was not coming back. And then that mask fell back down, and let me tell you, I have not seen the decent side of that man since he realized I was truly done. And then North Carolina has a law that you have to be separated for 1 year before you can file for divorce. And we actually were separated 3.5 years. And at that point, we had been apart for so damn long. I was totally on my own. He was doing his thing. We still had mild communication because at first we had joint decision making that we would do with the kids. We never filed child custody kind of thing, never asked for alimony or anything like that. I truly wanted him just gone and out of my life because it was a long 3 years. There's a lot of messages. There's a lot of just obnoxious and just like very condescending tones and he's very vengeful and sarcastic and gaslight the hell out of things, like gaslight the hell out of situations. So there came a point where, how do I put this? All of my planning had paid off. My resiliency was growing. My boundaries were growing. My wherewithal, my self-love was coming around. Doing all of this work, really doing some mirror work, really working on affirmations that I knew that I didn't believe, that I had to continue with those affirmations until they really stuck with me, because that's my belief in affirmation work. Right after he had left in 2017, I became a life coach, a life and business coach. And I've been in practice of that now for next year will be a decade, 9 years I've been doing it, helping thousands of people across the world, picking up their lives, building and expanding businesses, making more money and better relationships with people than they've ever had, better communication, better boundaries are the biggest thing. Working on that emotional intelligence piece, that going gray rock, it's the same, knowing that everyone's got their opinions and everybody's got their thought processes on things, but you do not have to be a sponge and absorb other people's thoughts and opinions. Your truth is your truth and their truth is their truth, and it's okay to coexist in that. Really honing in and learning the duality that life is, that you can have joy and happiness and anger and disappointment all in one spectrum of things for you. That's duality. Truly learning that there is a community of love and support out there. These are lessons that I had to truly learn the hard way and integrate, but then able to pass forward through all my coaching clients and things that I've done. Now, it's been a process. It's been an absolute honor of mine to do this work for the last 9 years. And in this last year, I have had the honor. I've had some revelations. How can I do this work deeper? How can I do this work broader? How can I do this work for a collective and not... I still offer one-on-one coaching. I still have one-on-one coaching packages. But how can I do this on a broader spectrum for the world and collective as a whole? How can I teach, walk the walk of the things that I have gone through, use the tools and lessons, the coaches that I have hired, and the classes and courses and things that I've been through? How can I pay that forward for people? And I founded the Inner Power Collective earlier this year, and that's been growing exponentially. So you can find the links to all of that in the link tree above. You know where to find that on the homepage there. And continue this work for the world as a whole, because that's truly what, I believe we walk our journey, whatever your journey is. I believe you walk your journey and you walk your purpose for a reason. You are not just brought to it, you are brought through it. You're still here. You've survived 100% of your worst days to this point. Now you get to take those lessons and those revelations and rise up and do better with them. That's the whole point. Everyone has failures. We rise up from those failures because we shift and we pivot, right? And if we are not shifting and pivoting, you're going to learn those lessons again and again and again and again until you get them. But that shift is beautiful. And at this point, we've helped so many thousands of people at this point that your process does not have to be as long as my process. I didn't have a community or a collective the way I've created for all of you. And that is a major point of all of this, because I want to be able to give to people what I needed, Christine 10 years ago needed, going through all of this. Christine 15, 20 years ago needed going through all of this. That girl that I needed, that leader, that woman that I needed, the steps that I needed, I want to be able to provide to other people on a much larger scale. And so that's why the Inner Power Collective was created. It's for people who are looking for expansion in business, looking for what their purpose is. How can we guide you back to your purpose? How can we guide you back to yourself? How can we give you the tools and the empowerment and the belief to strengthen what you need in your innermost core to have the most successful life, the most successful relationships? They don't all have to be romantic. The most successful businesses as a whole for you. Oh, I wish you would, Miss Melinda. I really, really hope you do. And I will be the first person on there listening. I have been through the depths of hell. I just spent 2 days telling you guys my whole story from start to finish, including my children and my move and the calculated steps I had to take. But that's not to say that my belief in myself and my self-love, when he finally left, that breath of relief. Everyone said, did you cry when he left? And I'll be honest with you, the day that he left and the moving, I video recorded the moving truck leaving our driveway the day he left, because it was almost like I needed this proof, this sense of relief that he was really gone. And now he was not allowed back into my house without permission. He could not any longer just walk through the garage or the front door and do whatever it was. And so it's a lot of healing, right? And every time the kids and I, for a long time, heard a garage door, you heard that where the garage door, we would jump, because that was one of those sounds. We had no idea what was coming through the door. Was it Dr. Jekyll or was it Mr. Hyde? Years and years and years of this. My kids, like I said, are now 21, 19, and 15. And my older 2 girls are still in therapy. They still seek help. My youngest son has repressed everything. He has horrible short-term memory. He definitely has to work twice as hard in school to keep grades up. He couldn't even really tell you about New Jersey anymore. He can barely, I can still, my birthday is 1/1/1, January 11th. His birthday is January 14th. It's 3 days after my birthday. But if I say to him, Tyler, when's my birthday? He's like his memory, he's just repressed so much. All of them have so many things they need to work through, and we're working on it. But they'll tell you the number one thing I recognized, the very first thing, and I openly talk about this with anyone who knows me on a personal level. Aaliyah's on here. She's my best friend in the entire world. Anyone on here who knows me personally knows this story, that the number one thing that I hated so much about myself when he and I first separated was that I was so reactionary. And it was from being with him. It was learned behavior, right? It was a defensive thing for myself. I was so reactionary. You know the expression, don't cry over spilled milk? But I would be. I would have been yelling. And I hated this version of me because that was not me previously. And so these are things that I needed to really, take that deep breath, count to 10, take that step back, really learn to process. What did that even mean? What did it mean to process, right? I never had silence time. I wasn't even, I was not allowed to have that around him. He would follow me. If we were fighting and I tried to walk away to bring, center myself, he would literally follow me. As I told you the story about how I went upstairs to the bedroom late at night and he came in and busted through the doors and pulled my hair and spit in my face. He would follow me. There was no allowing me to retract, to ground myself. There was nothing like that. Followed me. There was no separation of peace there because they would lose ground. It gives you a chance to think. It gives you a chance to calm down. And then they lose control that way. So truly hiring coaches, taking the work, creating tools, following these, implementing them myself, and then turning around and teaching other people to use them. Years and years and years of this work, years of healing. But I can tell you now that learning to respond versus react, and learning to understand, because again, this was a huge thing for me. If you did not agree with him, you were absolutely wrong, and he was going to scream and yell until he had the last word. And he had to be right. And I'm sure many of you can resonate with that too. And so I just decided I didn't care. I just gave up. And he would yell at me and he'd be like, you're this and you're that, or you're doing it wrong. And I would just stoically look at him and be like, whatever you say. Okay. That's what you want. Whatever you say. Taking my power back. Not giving him the reaction. Not giving him that energy of proving him right or wrong. And so taking my power back and really learning to ground myself and take a breath, my kids will tell you that who I am now versus who I was 10 years ago is 180 degrees, night and day, totally different. The person I was in New Jersey to the person I am now. 10 years ago today. 10 years ago today we moved here. Happy new moon to all of you out there who follow. And today also opens the eclipse portal so happy new moon and 10-year anniversary to my North Carolina stay. But this was decades worth of stuff. And also keep in mind, for those of you who weren't on yesterday, this may be new knowledge for you. I've known my ex-husband technically since we were 4 years old. We got together at 19 and we were together till we were 40, and then we were 3.5 years separated before we actually divorced. It's been a long journey. It's been a long journey. And this time next year, I'll be saying we've been apart 10 years, but 10 years that we've moved to North Carolina today. So going through all of this work for the last 9 years and really being able to implement it and teach it to others, and now being able to take my work on a much broader scale and implement it within this community on school. It's called the Inner Power Collective, and school is a free app. If you don't have it, why not? There are hundreds and hundreds of rooms you can be a part of on school. It's SKOOL. Check it out. There's links for all of this up there. And you are so brave for sharing. It's so sad what abuse does to ourselves and our children. Yeah. I mean, I have shared this story in the past, but not like this on here. I've shared it. It took me a minute, Melinda. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Like this, I didn't share immediately because I used to get threats from my ex-husband about this is before I had real facts behind all this too, but he used to tell me that he was going to sue me for defamation of character. I mean, you can't sue somebody for something. First of all, I never used his name. And second of all, you can't sue somebody for truth. It's not defamation of character when it's facts. when it's actual facts and truth, can't be sued. But I know that there was a lot of people that were watching me, and I still had this fear that I lived under this fear of who was going to say what and what was going to happen. What were the ramifications of the things, of letting the cat out of the bag. Now I've spent so many years talking about it, maybe not directly pointing fingers, but I've spent so many years talking about my journey and having lived under all of this. And I see, here's the number one thing for me. The work that I have done and implemented in the last 9 years, and the growth that I have done and how much I have changed in the last 9 years, the last 5 years, I can see my work through my kids. And I just had this conversation. My daughter just turned 19 a week ago, and we had this actual conversation. And I said, you know, what's really cool to me is that each generation gets better, right? Each generation breaks that cycle a little bit more and a little bit more. And I said to her, you know, I've worked really hard in the last 9 years. And she said, yeah, you have. And I said, I can see those changes, not only in my clients, because I don't see them in person, right? But I can see those changes in my kids, in the way that they handle conflict, in the way that they handle situations and relationships with friends and partnerships and whatever else it may be, their own father at this point now. But like, I can see how they are handling things by watching me implement the work that I'm doing over here, because they are still mimicking it all of these years later. Your children will practice what they're watching. You are a product of your environment. And that's always been one of the biggest lessons ever since my daughter said to me that one day, when do we get to leave? They're watching, they're implementing. So how are you handling it is how they are going to handle it. And you may not see it right away. You may see it in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but you will see it over the time. And these are the reasons I've created the Inner Power Collective on School. Because there are millions, I was going to say thousands, there are millions of people out there, men and women. It could be a parent, it could be a partner, it could be a spouse, it could be a next door neighbor, a alleged best friend. Like there's anyone. It can be anyone, any kind of relationship for you. It can be a boss that you're stuck in a work environment under this situation. But empowering people, giving them the tools, giving them the resources and the community to come together. Because you have to understand that this community on School is private. So the only people who know what's going on in this community, what is said in this community, are the people that are in the community. So they're coming from all over the world, uniting as one. You still have access to message me and have some one-on-one time. My VIP clients in there, they get one-on-one coaching calls with me. They get access to group coaching calls every other week. So they're still getting 3 calls a month with me. They're still getting weekly work with me, plus all the training that gets uploaded into the classroom section on School. They're getting all of the training, and the premium members are getting all of the trainings that are in School. They're all uploaded. You're getting free everything that I've done, everything that I have, we're giving to you in School. And now we even have the YouTube channel. And if you're on YouTube, go subscribe to the YouTube. It's the Inner Power Collective also. You see how uniform that all is. And if you subscribe and follow the Inner Power Collective over there, you can have the trainings and all the videos there as well. You see, I'm also on the Gram and the Book of Faces and here and Threads. You can find me all over. As much as I can spread lessons, as much as I can empower, as much as I can love you and help you and guide you, I am trying to give you all the ways to access me and all the ways to get the tools. It's simply up to you to take this whole community hands, take it by storm, and empower yourselves, grow yourselves, heal yourselves, but not by yourself. Hear that again. Do it for yourself, but not by yourself, because you're never alone. And that's what the Inner Power Collective is allowing us to do. So I hope you guys have heard me. I'm sure that as I sit here recapping, my journey through my whole entire relationship and marriage and all of that, I will come out with more videos. This will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can check it out there. Part 1 is already there. Now here is part 2. I'm so thankful for those of you that have come and hung out with me today. If you're looking for private, just one-on-one coaching and you're not quite ready for the whole community, you can send me a message on here or any of the other platforms. You can send me a direct message and we can have a conversation. The easiest way to come be a part of our worlds, my community, is to come join us at the Inner Power Collective. We have 2 different tiers of members over there. Like I said, we have the premium and the VIP. I've made it so that it's accessible to 99% of everyone. And, also the other thing to really know, especially with the VIPs, the whole group in general, but especially the VIPs, is it's confidential. So there aren't going to be things that are copy, cut, paste, shared, gossiped. Like there is none of that going on. We are truly here to help you succeed in every single area of your being, stepping into your purpose and your power, and however I can help you do that. You can find all the links to everything where above, and I will hope to see you all. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to try to do this an everyday thing. Yes, come follow me on YouTube for sure. And Melinda, I think that we're getting ready to, come follow me. Definitely come follow me on YouTube. You need driving material. If you're not in the school group, the Inner Power Collective, it is a paid membership. All that information again is in my bio. There are people in there they're going to have to get converted over if they choose to stay. And other than that, I will be back tomorrow. Like I said, I'm going to try to make this a daily thing. I'm not going to try. I'm going to make this a daily thing. What I'm trying to do is see if in general, the 12 o'clock time frame works best for me. So have a beautiful day, everybody. And enjoy our eclipse, full solar eclipse today. And enjoy this portal, and happy new moon to all of you.